There are so many questions still with the Indianapolis Colts. So, which one need answers the most? Will they have a remedy? And what questions do you, the fans, have about the state of the team? Well, let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by Indianapolis Colts on SI. My name is Drake Wally. I'm the deputy editor of the channel and co-host of the show. And then, of course, we are joined by Noah Gebert, analyst of the site and other co-host of this show. We just figured that this is a perfect time to be doing a mailbag. So much has happened since the last time we did one of these. I mean, this was 2.5 months ago we did one, but this team looks completely different. There's storylines that were not even close to happening the last time that we did one of these. But how are you doing, man? How's your Monday? It's a little sunny over here. I think I'm getting blinded a bit. But anyway, how are you doing, bud?
Yeah, I'm doing well, man. Yeah, I was excited about the opportunity to do a mailbag episode just because we see this every week in the chat where we've got these topics that we're going back and forth on. We've got this thing kind of scripted out and we kind of try to stick to a tight hour of what we're talking about. And then we see all these comments in the chat coming through from our live viewers and the opportunity to get that they're asking questions that we finally get to answer. We get to them here and there on some of the episodes, but it's nice to dedicate this whole episode to kind of what viewers are thinking, what their thoughts are, big questions. We've got a lot that were sent in via X and via friends that we're going to get to. But yeah, always in the live chat, throw down the questions that you've got. We'll be getting to those as well. There's going to be a lot to talk about, and I love these more conversational approach kind of episodes.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things is it's good that the Colts in this case have a lot of questions. I know that in the past, when this team has had questions, you're kind of like, what the heck is next for this franchise? Well, now it's far more positive. And we're not going to spend too much time with an introduction because we literally have so many questions. And then chat, put them in the chat too. We'll get to as many as we can within an hour. And there's not too many news and rumors. It's mostly with top 30 visits. But yeah, we'll go ahead and get to some of these super chats that are already hitting. So Truett, yet again, thank you so much for your donation. Thank you so much for being a long time viewer, listener of the show. And then, of course, I thought that it did have starred chats. And I think that I'm not able to find it now, but I was looking and I think it was well, if it pops up again, I'll pull it up. But it had another super chat that had a question, so I'm not seeing it. But if it pops up again, I'll pull it up. But yeah, we're just going to go ahead and dive right into this here. So this is Colts fans Q&A. As Noah said, this is a bunch of people on X, a bunch of people a couple from Facebook actually, and then just personal friends that have just pelted us with so many questions. So we're just going to jump right into this because it's going to take a while. And this first one here, this is going to be: how will Lou Anarumo's scheme perform with the new defensive additions? So we're talking about guys like Neville Gallimore, Corey Ballantyne, Charvarius Ward, Cam Bynum, of course, the last two who are really, I think, a part of this question. But I'll always throw this over to Noah first. What are your thoughts on Lou Anarumo? What are your thoughts on these new defensive additions? I think he had a say in getting some of these guys. I can't imagine that, you address corner and safety right out of the gate and Lou didn't have some kind of say-so in it. But what are your thoughts on this question here?
Yeah, coming in, I think the defense needed a huge influx of talent, just from based on what we've seen the past couple of years and their failure to reload at some of those spots and just kind of banking on young guys to outperform kind of their draft position and preseason expectations when whatever is kind of how you've been living the past few years on the defensive side of the ball. Lou Anarumo comes in, immediately they make an impact signing at corner, and immediately they make an impact signing at safety. As far as guys that had already been on the roster that I think are going to perform pretty well in Lou Anarumo's scheme, or the big name that comes up is Kenny Moore in the slot, being used in that similar type of role that Mike Hilton's been used in Cincinnati in years past, where he's going to get back to rushing the passer on blitzes a little bit more often, be used a little bit more around the field. Really like Charvarius Ward coming in at the cornerback room and giving the Colts that true CB1 that's going to follow around with the top receivers on the opposing side of the ball. So you're going to see a lot of different looks that the Colts are going to have to be in because you've got to kind of adjust things based on the fact that you've got a guy that's not always on one side of the field. He's going to follow receivers on each side and follow him into the slot. So when he's following a guy into the slot, you're going to see Kenny Moore bump a little bit outside and be used a little bit more creatively out there as well. I mean, there's a lot of guys on the roster you are obviously excited about. Latu, just with the success that Lou Anarumo had with a guy like Trey Hendrickson in Cincinnati, you kind of hope Latu can be that sort of a role on the Colts defense, maybe not in terms of production, but in terms of just generally where he is on the field and the packages that they use him on. And then I'd like to see Jalen Carlisle kind of fill that role as a full-time will linebacker over in this defense. I know that we kind of want to see the Colts add some competition there and not just award that position to Jalen Carlisle outright. But I think, Carlisle is going to be super fun to watch, being this guy that can be sideline to sideline and a good cover guy on the defensive back.
Yeah, and just kind of echoing what Noah mentioned about Charvarius Ward, one of the big things that he mentioned in his media day with Indianapolis or with the Indianapolis media is just how excited he is to be able to follow the number one receiver, and that is exactly what Lou Anarumo said. And if you guys really want to hear Lou gush about Charvarius Ward, go to YouTube and look up him breaking down film on Charvarius Ward. I'm telling you, he says elite corner, and he's going to cover the elite receivers. So that's going to be huge. And then, of course, Cam Bynum, he's a hell of a run stopper. He's going to be serviceable enough in coverage. You're going to have him and Cross together. They are going to stuff a lot of running backs. So that's going to be how they're going to be used. And then I do like how Noah brought up Jalen Carlisle, because we're talking about a guy that can cover really well, former safety. He's a little smaller for a linebacker. But that actually, before we even get into any of the other questions here, this one right here from David Whiteley. Do the Colts pursue Hendrickson, or could they help the Bengals keep Hendrickson taking on Jermaine Pratt and Geno Stone? So, of course, Jermaine Pratt, linebacker that's played with Lou Anarumo, and then you've got Geno Stone, who had his first season from Baltimore on a division rival, Cincinnati Bengals. And, of course, the guy goes out there as a safety, starts every single game. He has 4 picks. He had 7 in 2023 with the Ravens. I'm not 100% sure if Cincinnati would ever let him go. Especially the fact that he started all 17 games and looked so damn good. But what are your thoughts on this one? Because Jermaine Pratt has been a guy that you've heard a lot of times mocked to the Colts, or like that, the Colts should technically go and get, because Anarumo could probably use him well.
Yeah, another name we've mentioned is Von Bell, just previous connections with Lou Anarumo. And Jermaine Pratt, especially one of those guys that you're interviewing. Jermaine Pratt, he says high things about Lou Anarumo, and you're talking to Lou Anarumo, he has nothing but good things to say about his time with Jermaine Pratt and how he operated that defense. I think it makes sense. I think that those two names are more likely than a Trey Hendrickson trade at this point, which I'm sure we'll get some more questions on Trey Hendrickson and kind of what the outlook is on that, because that's just too tantalizing of a name to ignore and drop off. I mean, if you have any opportunity to add that kind of guy to your defense, you obviously want to talk about that, and you want that to be a discussion, and we'll discuss that on the show for sure. Geno Stone, a name at safety, I think they could save around $7 million if they were to move on. But they've been moving on from safeties recently. Maybe they kind of want to keep that stability at the position for once after getting Geno Stone on that 2-year deal last year. Von Bell, Jermaine Pratt, I think are more likely at this point to come to the Colts than Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah, and we got to go ahead and get to a super chat here. We always have to address these. So Paul Wilson, thank you so much for your $5 donation. The legend himself. Going into the season with the 2 worst statistical QBs in the NFL still has me beyond worried. I can't believe the Colts are in this position. Talk about a U-turn. But we'll make this one brief, because we've talked ad nauseum about this competition here. But look, at the end of the day, both these guys have something to prove. You've got Anthony Richardson, who has to show that Richardson has far more pressure on his shoulders. He has to show he can lead the team, take steps forward, not be a wildly inaccurate passer, not have more turnovers than touchdowns, just a lot of things for Richardson. And then Jones has to show that he can start again, because the Giants didn't just give up on him. He becomes a backup. Of course, we find out later the Vikings tried to keep him. He decided to go with the Colts. He felt like it was a better opportunity. What are your thoughts on the 2 QBs? I mean, they obviously both have a lot to prove, but boy, they have a lot to prove while also competing for a starting spot with each other.
Yeah, I like Paul's comment here saying he can't believe the Colts are in this position. Just last season, going into last year, you were so optimistic because of what you saw from Anthony Richardson in his rookie year, 4th overall pick, and then it just kind of all fell off. When you go a whole year and he gets injured yet again at some point, and then he has the issue getting benched. He still has issues with accuracy, and you didn't see as many of the flash plays like you saw in his rookie year. Yeah, I mean, you're worried, obviously. That was obviously a regression from what you saw in year one, and you're worried that that's going to continue into year three coming in here. Yeah, but like I said last week, I think the Colts coming into this offseason were already in a bad quarterback situation because essentially you had Anthony Richardson and nothing really behind him. And there wasn't really anything the Colts could have done to this point to make it that much better of a quarterback situation. I don't think going out and getting Sam Darnold was really in the cards. I think
you're giving
Daniel
up
Jones,
on AR to do that.
Yeah, I think Daniel Jones was the highest level guy you could bring in to have the gauge of a competition. There wasn't really any other options there. I think the only other option that would make you feel better about the quarterback position, and obviously this is debatable, is just selling out entirely on Anthony Richardson, moving on and trying to get one of the top two guys in this year's draft. I think it's the only thing they could have drastically done, but obviously that's would cost so many resources, and you're giving up on your 4th overall pick. They weren't ready to do that yet. So they're taking their chances with 2 lottery tickets that already have some numbers scratched off, and hopefully one hits.
Yeah, it's going to be, it's like I said, Paul, we've said this multiple times. It is going to be the storyline probably through the regular season because I'm sure that, like I see another comment here, both are probably going to end up playing given Richardson's awful injury history. So thank you so much, guys. We're going to go ahead and get to this next question here. So any notable free agents available for the Colts to sign that can help? So this one is interesting because they pretty much address defensive back.
Yeah.
I mean, you could probably still add some guys. One guy that stands out to me without question is Von Bell. You mentioned it already, but they could absolutely use more familiarity. Mike Hilton is another guy. Both those guys are Lou Anarumo guys. Is there anybody, in your opinion, regardless of position, I think that if they did anything, it might be on the defensive side still. But is there anybody that really stands out to you, Noah, that you feel like the Colts could still use? Because I even think they could use a Gerald Everett at tight end.
Yeah, that's actually the name that I was going to throw out there. I think when you're putting the name notable in front of it, then you're talking about a free agent that you think is going to come in and play a significant role. I think the Colts are really in a healthy situation on most spots of their roster. I think going into the draft, if your biggest needs are swing tackle and defensive tackle 3, then I think you're in a pretty good spot. And I feel like that's kind of how the Colts are at right now, save for the tight end position, right, where I think you have 0 starters on your roster currently, and adding 2 new starters before the training camp kicks off, I think would be a good move for the Colts. And really, you don't have a lot of names that you're looking at in free agency anymore. I think Gerald Everett would be that premier guy in that group to get a veteran guy who's produced in the past, has produced at levels that the Colts tight end room did not see last season. So yeah, I think that'd be the number one name that I'd consider in terms of notable free agents. I think there's obviously still some depth guys that you could see being brought in, some veterans at offensive tackle that could be out there and be that swing guy and maybe push that Matt Gonsalves into guard permanently, just so he can focus solely on right guard going into this offseason. I think giving him that clarity would make that position feel a little bit safer. But yeah, most notable, I think Gerald Everett there. You hit it on the head.
Yeah, and I also think that they could address defensive tackle still. I mean, you've got, I know he's really old. I know by NFL standards, this guy is ancient, but Linval Joseph, he's been as reliable of a depth tackle as you can sign. 36 and a half years old, it doesn't matter. I think he's a gap plugger. That's what you need because you're not getting that with Neville Gallimore, right? You're not getting that. I still think they're going to address another defensive tackle in the draft, but another guy's Jonathan Hankins, another guy's Maurice Hurst. These guys are all gap pluggers, and the Colts really need to get better at defending the run behind guys like Defoe and Grover Stewart. We got to get to another super chat here from Paul Wilson, a second one. Great take, fellas, on the AR and Daniel Jones thing. I'm just frustrated.
Yeah.
A lot of Colts fans are right there with you because it's just such a question mark at the most important position. And this team, until they got Richardson, what was quarterback? A question mark. And yet it still is. So unfortunately, it's not going to end anytime soon. You're going to get this for another season at least. But my goodness, guys, thank you so much for all of these super chats and comments. It is booming in here. But we're going to go ahead and jump to the next one. I love this question. Might be my favorite one so far. And that is very simply, what are the chances Jelani Woods is a legitimate tight end? Oof, man. I'll go ahead and punt this one to you first. I know that you've said, you can't even look at Jelani Woods like he's even a member of the roster yet.
Yeah.
for those of you out of the know, to make it brief, he obviously showed so much promise in 2022. Unfortunately, it was a crap year for everyone, and he played with Matt Ryan, Nick Foles, and Sam Ellinger. None of those guys were even remotely good. And then he misses all of 2023 with an off-season injury. Then he misses all of 2024. I think it was a toe injury. So you haven't seen Jelani Woods play in all these, 2 seasons now. He was one of the most athletic tight ends ever tested at the combine. What are your thoughts on Jelani? Do you think that there's still hope for, I think it's the former Virginia Commodore, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, I think the chances are maybe a little bit higher than I've maybe made it seem like I thought it was in the past. I just think from the Colts perspective, you need to operate from the sense that he's not going to contribute anything because he just hasn't been able to stay healthy. I think moving forward, that should be the expectation, and that should affect the way that you approach the roster construction and what you're allocating to the tight end position. I don't think you should go into training camp with a roster spot available to him that's not really being hardly competed for. So yeah, you need to make additions there. But I mean, aside from that, I mean, injury is so difficult to predict. Once a guy gets injured, it seems like he stays injured, and that's been the case with Jelani Woods. There's a couple of guys on the Colts roster that kind of fall into that bucket. But I think if he stays healthy, then I think he can be a legitimate tight end. Legitimate, I think, in terms of a rotational guy, and maybe not your outright stud starter that's going to be on the field 90% of the snaps. But yeah, I mean, injuries are so hard to predict, but just based on his history, I'd say probably around a 20% chance that he can be a good contributor for you this upcoming season.
Yeah, and right here, I mean, we're looking at, I mean, this is actually kind of a funny comment from Stats Matt, but he says, I'll give him a 10% chance, which is his RAS, relative athletic score. So in a recent article I wrote, and this was something from Kentley Platt himself, I mean, he put I think it was the top 10 or top 5, for each team as far as most athletic that they've ever drafted. And I mean, Jelani Woods was on that list, but my goodness, outside of A.D. Mitchell, guys like Daniel Scott, all those guys, they had just been hurt, which is what you get with athletic guys. It happens, that you're going to get injuries. But with Woods, it has been an especially hardcore case. You're looking at 2022, 25 catches, 312 yards, 3 touchdowns. What really sticks out is 16 of those catches are first downs. Yeah. This is a guy who has a wide span. He's very fast. He's 6'7". He just looks like he should be a red zone threat. But like Noah said, you got to treat him like he's not really going to be an impact guy. You can't not draft somebody or potentially sign someone just because you have Woods on the roster and he's running on a treadmill. Okay, like that's just not good enough. But yeah, another one here is never would have thought Drew Ogletree was the top tight end. Look, man, at the end of the day, if we'll put a cap on it with this, if Jelani Woods can stay healthy, that's it. If he can just stay healthy and those injuries haven't already started to set him back and slow him down, he is the most talented tight end right now on the roster, period. Will Mallory's not close. Drew Ogletree's a blocker. And even if they were to draft a Tyler Warren, I mean, Jelani Woods, until Tyler Warren shows it at the NFL level, I mean, Jelani Woods is more athletic probably. He's massive. He's a bigger red zone target. So it's really all about if he can stay healthy, but he hasn't been able to do that. That's first and foremost. Yeah. So we'll have to see. Yeah, for sure.
He hasn't been healthy, and you've got a coaching staff that didn't even see him for his breakout rookie year where he was contributing. So you've got Shane Steichen and that offensive staff who's really not going to be attached to him at all. So I think that does play a factor in terms of how likely he is to get snaps even when he does return healthy to the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, when it's all said and done, look, I know that we've talked on this show that, the guy shouldn't be treated like he's a tight end on the roster and stuff. Every Colts fan, analyst, anybody that covers the team or even has anything to do with the team, coaching staff included, they want to see something from Jelani Woods. He's too gifted, too massive, and he showed too much promise 2 years ago to not want that because he was showing out at times. So this next one is really interesting. I think this one is from Stats Matt. I hope I'm not wrong. If it's not from you, Stats, let us know. Early in the draft, how did the Colts weigh positional value following the free agency additions? Now, me and Noah talked about this. We were like, I remember we did our mock draft and we didn't even get, I don't think we even drafted a tight end. I think that we went Will Johnson. And then I think in the second round, we went with Siobhan Revell Jr. And then I think we went safety. I mean, we went hardcore after the secondary. Flip the script. You got Charvarius Ward now. Then you've
Yeah.
got Cam Bynum. What are your thoughts? Like, so we'll just go ahead and say first and second rounds. Now, what's the notion for you, Noah? And then I'll give my answer.
Yeah, I'd be okay with them still taking a defensive back in the first or second rounds. Uh, but I think what changed is they're not forced to, where it felt like before free agency, they were almost pigeonholed in this spot where tight end's still a major hole. But I feel it's a way more deadly to a team in terms of your just roster build if you have a massive hole at safety or at corner, especially outside corner that the Colts were kind of struggling with. So they needed to fill those holes. I still think there's room where if you bring a first round corner in, you can bump one of those other guys off the roster. Maybe that bumps a Corey Ballantyne, who might have been just a special team guy or a depth guy off the roster. Or maybe you have room to keep 6 there. I think no matter what, you've got room at safety. So I don't think that's really making you force into any difficult roster decisions if you draft a safety in the first round. If a guy like Starks is someone you fall in love with, I don't think that's likely, but I still wouldn't hate it.
Yeah, and what the hell are you guys talking about in that chat? You guys are crazy. But yeah, I mean, I think that now I personally would draft a corner in the second round. I think that you're going to have guys like Darian Porter. They're going to be sitting there. Guys like Siobhan Ravel probably going to be sitting there. Maxwell Hairston, he's definitely going to be there. It's going to be interesting to see how they approach it. But the first round, I think you have to get a tight end.
Yeah.
I can't imagine after you get Charvarius Ward, Cam Bynum, I can't imagine them using a first rounder on a safety or a cornerback. Now, we could be wrong because a guy like Mason Taylor, who I know a lot of people would love to see in a Colts uniform, he's probably not going until round 2. So maybe you flip that. And like Noah said, you're not as confident in a guy like Corey Ballantyne because let's be honest, Will Johnson, probably better than Corey Ballantyne out there as a defensive back. Siobhan Ravel, if he can just stave off those injuries that have been a concern for him, he's going to be better than Corey Ballantyne. And like Noah said, maybe you've got a practice squad guy or somebody that comes off, the roster because the rookie bumps him off. But that'll be interesting because they could also, who knows, maybe they end up going defensive edge, in one of these first 2 rounds because they don't have Dio anymore.
I think everything's on the table there. I think offensive tackle, you could go guard or tackle, and that just kind of dictates what you do with Matt Gonsalves, but I think you could do that either way. Running back, obviously, maybe not. Quarterback, probably not going to happen. But I think anywhere else, if you're taking a defensive tackle, you're taking a linebacker like Jahad Campbell, I think that's an awesome move. Edge, like you mentioned, anywhere on the offensive line. And then wide receiver, I don't think you're going to do that either. But I mean, I still, having playmakers in a make or break year for Anthony Richardson, I don't think the worst move. I would put it lower on the list than some of the others, but I really think maybe trenches would be my main focus, even outside of tight end. Even though I know the need at tight end is drastic.
Yeah, real quick, one guy that I have just absolutely been obsessed with the Colts potentially getting in the second round. He's probably going to be mid to late. Tate Ratledge from Georgia. It's not just the fact that he has a mullet and you could put it next to the other mullet in Tanner Bortolini, but it's that you've got an absolute mauler. Okay, and you need that interior lineman, and even if it's going to be a guy that's going to sit behind Matt Gonsalves, let's say that you're just bought into Gonsalves being your guard, you want someone behind them, and it can't just be Danny Pinter. Okay, so we'll see because in a nutshell, defensive line that includes edge is on the board. So is any offensive lineman, mostly interior, probably not center. You're probably talking guard or a tackle that can move into guard. You've still got cornerback on the board. Linebacker is on the board, absolutely on the board, because they don't have anybody. They're not going to re-sign EJ Speed unless he falls through the cracks and they can get him on like a 1-year, $4.5 million deal like they did Blackman. Everything is on the board, and so is tight end, of course. So that's kind of what we think they're going to do. But, hey, you know what? Hey, Logan, absolutely respect Andy Pinter as a center. As a guard, he's not as effective. So we'll have to see what they do in that aspect. But this next one is a big one. Here we go. Yeah. Would you take a short reach for a premium position over a non-premium position player you might have slightly higher on your board? So interesting. So basically, this is a thinker because there's so many ways you can approach this. So let's say the Colts are sitting there at 14. You really don't think that a guy who maybe is an 18th or a 19th, potential, first rounder, you're kind of wanting to get him now, and you're wanting to get him at one of those positions like we mentioned, like defensive end, guard. Really it would be more like, I would dare say linebacker, because at that point, tight end, you're probably just waiting until the second
Yeah.
round. I don't know if I would, because there's so much talent in this draft. Outside of quarterback and maybe wide receiver, there is some talent at wide receiver. You've got depth. You've got trench talent on both sides. You've got plenty of linebackers, plenty of tight ends, plenty of defensive backs. You've got some safeties in the first, 3 or 4 rounds you can draft. What are your thoughts on this? I know Ballard typically isn't a guy who likes to reach. If anything, he's going to trade up.
Yeah, Ballard's not a guy who seems to worry about premium positions or positional value as much as some other GMs around the league. I know it's been his motto lately is just you take the guy you like. I think that's kind of led to some weird roster construction where your most talented, higher paid guys were your running back, your offensive guard, inside linebacker when you had Shaq Leonard. So, I mean, it obviously hasn't worked for the Colts up to this point. So maybe they do try to focus on those more premium positions. I would say corner would be a premium position. You'd focus on receiver, offensive tackle more than offensive guard would be more of a premium spot. I think even linebacker maybe has turned into more of a premium position, which is something to kind of monitor. I think the premium position kind of changes a little bit year after year, and I think some positions get a little bit more focus. And then if you want to get even more granular with it, you're kind of looking at contracts and how they compare. Like if you're drafting Tyler Warren 14th overall, he's already going to be like in the top 10 highest paid tight ends just because of his draft position.
Yep.
Whereas if you draft a corner first or 14th overall, then he's going to be not ranked in the top 50 in terms of starting cornerback money. So just kind of where you're at. I think the Colts right now are just in a position where it doesn't matter so much about roster construction, and they're just desperately trying to stockpile talent and refill talent because it seems like some has fallen off and they haven't been able to refill in years past. So I think at this point and where the Colts are at, I don't think you reach for a premium position and you just go for the best player on your board.
Yeah, and they've done a lot through free agency. So you've done a little bit of that depth tackle. You've done your starting cornerback, which by the way, right out of the gate, when Ward hit the rock, like when that deal was struck, best cornerback. And Kenny Moore, no disrespect, Charvarius Ward is literally going to be following around guys like Tyreek Hill, guys like Nico Collins. I mean, he's going to follow all those dudes all game long. So that takes care of corner. Safety's taken care of. Really, you need to still address linebacker. Do you go after a guy like Jihad Campbell, despite the injury? Do you go after a guy maybe in round 2, or do you reach for a guy like Demetrius Knight Jr. if he's still sitting there in round 2 and you're thinking, well, he might fall a couple spots, maybe trade back regardless? I think that linebacker is a very interesting position because the Colts need more than just Zaire Franklin and Jalen Carlisle, because while Jalen Carlisle showed a lot of promise, he also only played in 10 games. You know what I mean? So we'll have to see. That's a really good question, though. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that question. So this next one, we're getting right back to it, man. This is going to dominate. It's just going to dominate the Colts headlines. We're going to be covering this as analysts all freaking year. And that is, can Daniel Jones win the QB battle over Anthony Richardson? If so, what does that mean for AR? I'll let you start off on this one. We're probably going to spend the next 6 to 7 minutes talking about this one, just because it doesn't matter how much we've covered it. There's endless things to say, but what are your thoughts on this question?
It might not be the last Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones question we get on this episode. So, I mean, it's something huge you have to talk about. We can sit here all day and talk about how the Colts need a tight end, but if they don't have a quarterback, it doesn't matter if they have a tight end or not. In terms of the tenure of this current regime, I think that would be just over. I think, if Anthony Richardson doesn't win the battle with Daniel Jones, I think that's more a reflection of Anthony Richardson than it is of Daniel Jones. I don't really expect Daniel Jones to come out and look otherworldly coming into training camp. And I think he has to outperform Anthony Richardson by a significant margin in training camp for them to hand over that starting job to Daniel Jones. I think, like we mentioned in past episodes, you can't just go in through 7-on-7 and 11-on-11 in training camp, those reps, and add up their completion percentages for those and then just give it to the highest percentage guy. I think even if Daniel Jones is outperforming Anthony Richardson in that sense, then you still are recognizing the fact that when it comes time to play the game and full pads are on, the running element that you get with Anthony Richardson just outweighs Daniel Jones quite a bit. And the ceiling that you have with Anthony Richardson outweighs Daniel Jones quite a bit. And I think in a year where you're kind of fighting for your job, you're hoping on that ceiling to hit more than just kind of an average year. If you think that Daniel Jones outperforming Anthony Richardson is at best only going to lead you to 8 or 9 wins, then I think you kind of ride or die with Anthony Richardson there, and you take the 4-12 or 4-13 or whatever at the risk of being able to go something like 11-5, right, or 11-6.
Well, yeah, and look, man, if they end up going 4-13, I mean, Richardson's gone, Ballard's gone, Steichen's gone. Yeah. That's going to be a complete rebuild. I personally think Daniel Jones can win this competition, but here's what it's going to take. It's going to take potentially two things. If it's just one, we'll go with that. If it's just one, it would take Anthony Richardson just continuing to fall apart. Mm-hmm. You'd see just a awful completion rate even during camp. Lack of awareness, can't read a defense. Because right now, as far as pro ready, if you're going off of 2024, I hate to say it, but Daniel Jones is the guy. All right, I know that he's not that great. I know that he's struggled with fumbles and, also reading defenses, and the guy has almost no pocket awareness, but he was also sacked almost 3 times a game for his career. Okay, I mean, this is a dude that was sacked constantly. I mean, all the time, pressured all the time. The Giants absolutely sucked at giving him anything. So outside of Saquon Barkley, that team gave him diddly poo to work with. So this is a better roster than he's ever had, better offensive line, better receivers. If you get a guy like Tyler Warren, it's the best tight end he's had since Evan Ingram. Okay, I don't even know if he played with Evan Ingram, or if he did, it was very short. So Jones has a chance to blossom, but if it's two things that happens, it's that Richardson falls apart and Jones takes a couple big old steps forward, because at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, the Colts want Anthony Richardson to succeed. But I really do expect Richardson to win this quarterback battle. I do. I think he's got the higher ceiling. I think that he's got far more to offer. And if he even hits 50% of what they want him to hit, he's going to win that starting position.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the term open competition is a little bit confusing. I think it's open in the sense that, theoretically either of them could win it. But I think it's definitely going to be weighted in favor of Anthony Richardson. They're going to want him to win it. And like I said, if they're somewhat even, it's going to be Anthony Richardson. If Daniel Jones is just a little bit ahead of Anthony Richardson, I think it's Anthony Richardson. I think Anthony Richardson would just have to come out and prove that he can't handle it, or he's going to come out and show exactly what he showed in training camp last season. If we get any performance out of Anthony Richardson like we did pre-benching last season, then they're going to, I think, give that nod to Daniel Jones. But I don't think Daniel Jones can do too much in his power. he could play really well come training camp. If Anthony Richardson is playing well also, they're going to give it to Anthony Richardson. So I think that all falls on AR and whether or not he wants to take the job.
And lastly, that's exactly why all the pressure's on him, is because he has this job to lose, because you know what you're getting with Daniel Jones. You do not know what you're getting yet with Anthony Richardson, and this season's going to tell you what you're going to get with Anthony Richardson. So, this next one I love this question just because it talks about somebody that's not a prominent like superstar or anything like that, but it is a new free agent addition, and that is, how big of an impact do you think Khalil Herbert will have? I'll actually go ahead and start this one. Khalil Herbert comes off as a receiving back. He is not. What he is, though, is explosive as hell. And he's the kind of guy that if you give him a one cut and he's got a gap and he's got a look, he is gone. He's very fast. He's very good with his feet. I think that when you talk about, when has he ever had a Jonathan Taylor in the backfield with him? Never. When has he had a Jonathan Taylor in the same room as him? Never. And I think that he's going to be coming in, he's going to get like maybe 5 or 6 snaps or 5 or 6 carries a game. And if Taylor, does have to sit out a game, you're not missing as much of a beat as when you had Trey Sermon. I mean, you've got light feet as opposed to concrete shoes. So, what are your thoughts on this? I just think that it gives this backfield far more firepower than what they had last season.
Yeah, and I think it gives it a little bit more flexibility. Where he's not a premier pass blocker, but I think he can hold his own there, and he's not a premier pass catcher, but I think he can do that if you ask him to do it. He's more of a runner, or just a pure runner at the running back position. But I think if you have him in the game, you're not telegraphing what you intend to do. Where when you were in the situation last season where you take Jonathan Taylor off the field on third down and you bring in Trey Sermon, you automatically know Trey Sermon's staying in there to pass block. You don't need to worry about him as a receiving threat. He's not going to get the ball up the middle, and even if he did, I don't know that you'd be that threatened. But I think he gives the offense a little bit more versatility, where if you bring in that number 2 RB in Khalil Herbert, then it leaves the whole playbook open at that point. And I think that gives a lot of flexibility to a play caller like Shane Steichen, and I think that's going to be really valuable to the offense.
Yeah, and hey, when you can put more weapons in the backfield and you can set up, because there's going to be formations where Richardson's going to be in the middle, he's going to be ready to take the snap. You're going to have Taylor, you're going to have Herbert. Mm-hmm. That right there gives. I mean, if I'm a linebacker, I'm sitting there going, which one of these 3 absolute monsters is going to get the football? I mean, Herbert's obviously not a runner like Richardson is. Richardson's scary because he could hurt you. Yeah. Like he's just. I mean, I remember watching him truck that defender against the Jets. I was worried for the Jets defender, that cornerback. But look, this is a good signing. It was needed, but I think, here, I have to highlight this one. He's not a pass catching back. You still need a third down pass catcher. This draft class is loaded with talent. So I fully expect the Colts to still draft a running back, maybe day 3, maybe late day 2. Mm-hmm. But Tyler Goodson, unless he's it, he hasn't shown much outside of 2023 when him and Sermon had to take over against the Steelers. So we'll have to see. I think that it adds some good firepower and a nice different element, and as well as a guy who can back up Jonathan Taylor, who played plenty with the Bears. Somebody called him a Bears legend, which I absolutely love that. So, but yeah, we'll have to see. I think Khalil Herbert has a chance to have a career resurgence of sorts with the Indianapolis Colts and Shane Steichen. So we'll go ahead and get to this next one here. We still have 4 big questions, but I love this one too. Is Lou Anarumo going to get the best year out of Charvarius Ward's career in 2025? I remember getting texted this question. This one is so hard to say. What are your thoughts, Noah? I know I've got an answer here just because I'm looking at his stats. But what are your thoughts here? The guy's a former Pro Bowler, All-Pro, and Super Bowl champion.
Yeah, I mean, that's difficult to top, right? It's just Charvarius Ward's
prediction
has been good up to this point, so I'd say it's unlikely he's going to have the best year of his career. The best year of his career would essentially mean, I mean, if we're disregarding team success and on the playoff wins and whatever, that would mean we'd have an All-Pro corner again, which would be incredible just in the first year of him coming over to the Indianapolis Colts. I don't think that shouldn't be the expectation. I think he can be that kind of player. I think he's proven that he proved that in 2023, but I think he can be that type of player, but I think you're setting yourself up for failure if you bring in a free agent and assume that he's going to be or expect him to be an All-Pro immediately. So, yeah, I think you're running a little bit of a risk there. I think he can have similar production to what he had in 2023. Obviously, 2024 was a down year for a myriad of reasons. So you hope that 2023 is the most recent full season sample size, and that's kind of what you want to get. But, yeah, I mean, Super Bowl champion, All-Pro is not something that I'm expecting from him.
Yeah, and look, that season, ladies and gentlemen, when he had an All-Pro, it was second team All-Pro, but that's still freaking All-Pro. 23 pass deflections, 5 interceptions, 91 return yards. He had a touchdown. I mean, the guy, he had 72 tackles, 56 were by himself. He had a fumble forced. He started all 17 games. He wasn't going through arguably one of the, if not the worst thing that a person can go through with a family. Okay, so I love I'll even bring this up again. This is what I expect from Charvarius Ward entirely, is you have a guy that is absolutely ready to play football again. And if you heard his press conference with the Colts and with the media, he said that he figured 2024 was going to be an All-Pro year for him. Yeah. And he wanted 2024 to be an all-pro year for him. But when you go through it, I encourage people to go see what this guy, go look up what he's been through. And the fact that he is still playing football, the fact that he's with a new team and he's motivated, guy called himself hungry to succeed again. Given his resume and given what he's done and the success he's seen, regardless of all pro, Pro Bowl, whatever,
Yeah.
I think you're getting probably one of the best cornerbacks the Colts have seen in a while.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
go ahead.
if you get a top 15 corner who plays all 17 games, that's a massive win. If there's no Pro Bowls, no All Pros, or any accolades like that going around, I don't think you're hurting too much. But yeah, I'd say top 15 is kind of what you're hoping for out of him.
Let's just say that me and Noah believe he's going to have a damn good season. You know, the best season, it's really hard to beat that 2023 because he led the NFL in pass deflections with 23. It's very hard to get that back. So this next one is really, really good. It's a long-winded one, but it's got one of the biggest storylines that have just dominated everything for the Colts. And that is very simply, what would a shocker trade look like at 14? Thinking similar to the Buckner trade, would a trade for Hendrickson be viable, and what would it look like to make it work for the Colts? I think, so Trey Hendrickson right now, he's stalled in his contract talks, both with the Bengals and with trade talks. So he's wanting $30+ million a year. The Bengals are like, well, that's a lot of money, Trey. And then you got these trade, packages. The Bengals are like asking for too much. And teams are like, hey, we want him, but your price is ridiculous. So right now there's like a complete and utter stalemate. Trey Hendrickson's getting nothing right now. So I think that they're going to lower their trade package for him at some point. Maybe he takes a better deal before the draft even happens. But let's hypothetically say he's still on the shelf.
Yeah.
What do you think that the Colts are going to have to give up for him? Because let me draft order full. Okay. So right now, if we're looking at the NFL draft order, the full draft order, the Bengals have the 17th pick, the 49th pick, and the 81st pick in just the first couple of rounds. The Colts have 14, 45, and 80. So they pick right in front of the Bengals in the third round. What do you think Indianapolis would have to give up as far as draft stock? Let's say that they're at 12 or 14 and they say, you know what, we can get Trey Hendrickson. I'm telling you, people, it's going to cost a fortune.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's been the main thing. I know Diana Rossini of The Athletic's been kind of on top of this thing of what the Bengals have been asking for and how it's been scaring teams away. So I imagine that would be in the conversation of a 1 to an early 2 that teams just weren't willing to give up. I'd imagine the Colts are in that similar situation. A guy that does not have a contract past this season, so you're going to obviously come in and get that new deal who's around 35, 40 million a year, which, I mean, aside, if we're just talking draft capital, and then we need to leave out the entire conversation that the Colts only have $19 million in cap room right now and would need to sign a guy to a 35 to 40 million average per year deal, which I think disqualifies them already. They could make some moves to kind of wiggle up and make that happen, I guess, if that's the only move they make for the rest of the offseason. And they would have to cut some guys to do that. So I don't think they're necessarily willing to do that. But yeah, I think that draft capital is going to be way too much. 14 is not something you're considering giving up unless you're trading 14 to trade back to that Bengals pick and then give up something else later. I think third round is what the Colts would top out in terms of their offer. And I think that's really what the prudent thing would be, just in terms of the situation that you'd be in with the contract there with Hendrickson. And the age with Hendrickson. Yeah, because you've got everybody else on your roster at right around 30. I mean, Kwity Paye and Latu are low, but I mean, if you bring in Hendrickson, I'm not sure you're bringing back Kwity Paye. So that kind of, I mean, it would just change the whole landscape of that defensive line there for you, where you've got three highly paid players in Grover Stewart, Forrest Buckner, and Trey Hendrickson, all highly paid, all topping 30 years old, which puts you in a difficult situation. So draft capital would have to be pretty minimal to make that trade happen, I think, for the Colts.
Yeah, and to put a bow on this, because we're going to trust us, we'll talk about Trey Hendrickson again on this show at some point. But what really makes him so alluring to the Colts is a couple things. He's played with Lou Anarumo, but it's not just that. Since he joined Lou Anarumo, 4 straight Pro Bowls, 14 sacks, then 8 sacks, then 35 sacks over the last 2 seasons, 17 and a half per. You're talking about 83 pressures last season. That's outstanding. You're talking about an all-pro season when he's 30. But there you go. When is the regression going to start? I mean, Trey Anderson's been in the league. He played with the Saints before. People might forget that. He had 13 and a half sacks with them in 2020. He was 23 in 2017 when he was drafted. So this guy's been in the NFL for 8 seasons. All right. Then you do have to worry about the fact that Ballard really likes his draft picks. He likes the guys that are on the roster. You've gone and done some things in free agency. You can pick up a defensive edge in the draft, man. I mean, I would just say that I don't think, I think what Noah mentioned, I think that if I don't think it's viable. And I think that to make it work, you'd have to eat your cap for breakfast. Like you'd have to absolutely drain your cap. There's going to be players you're going to have to give up. Draft picks are going to have to be given up. It's going to cost so much, which again is why teams don't want to trade for him right now, because otherwise they would. The Colts have made it known that they're interested.
Yeah.
But the Bengals they're being way too stingy with it. I do want to hit just a couple questions right here because we do only have 2 more. This is from Leo Vargas. Do you think by us doing what we did in free agency and having a pretty solid draft, can we be a 10-7 team in 2025, especially if we draft Tyler Warren? I think 10-7 is more than it. This is going to sound so cliche. It's all about how does the quarterback play, like because they've got the roster to do this. They do. They have good wide receivers. If you get Tyler Warren, you've got the tight end secured. You've got good depth at tight end. You have Jonathan Taylor. You've got Khalil Herbert there. Your offensive trenches, as long as Bortolini can build off of his season last year and Gonsalves playing. I mean, he played over 600 snaps at both tackles. If the offensive line works out. Defensive line, you just need one more depth guy on the interior, maybe an additional edge. You need a linebacker, but the secondary looks pretty decent right now. You need more depth at safety and cornerback. But, man, this is a team that if you remove the quarterback ridiculousness going on right now, they absolutely should finish 10-7. It'd be an insult if they didn't. But, Leo, to answer your question, and I just want to get a brief thought from Noah on this, it is all about that quarterback position. And if one of those guys sucks or they both suck or they can't get anything going baby, look at another 8-9, 9-8 season.
Yeah, I agree. I think that might be the ceiling at what we're looking at. I don't think Daniel Jones is going to take you to any more than that. You're going to really need some other players to absolutely carry the team, regardless of who's playing quarterback, I think, at this point. I think maybe Richardson could be that guy at some point in his career, but I don't think anyone's expecting that coming off the season that he just had where he got benched. And then Logan made that mention of Tyler Warren, or Leo made that mention of Tyler Warren being drafted, which I think helps in the immediacy, but I don't think it really adds to the amount of wins that you're expected to get. I think there are players that you could draft in the first round that would make maybe a more immediate impact in terms of wins and losses. I think maybe Jahad Campbell, regardless or depending on how that injury shakes out and how much he would play, would maybe move the needle for you a little bit more in terms of just pure wins and losses. But I think, that need at tight end is just so severe that just seems like the most logical pick at the time. I think 10-7 is going to be super ambitious because no matter how much we like what they did in free agency and how much we like how they address those positions that are super vital to Lou Anarumo's defense and super vital in how big of holes they were this past season, I think 10-7 is going to be so far of a stretch because you just didn't do enough at quarterback because you couldn't do enough at quarterback based on the resources that you've allocated to it in the past and the investment you've got in Anthony Richardson right now.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Leo. We're just going to hit this next one really quick because it's such a great question, and I think that it does need to be addressed. But do you guys have legit concerns? This is from Logan on the culture in the locker room, or is it just McAfee speaking loud words? We already addressed McAfee. Got a lot of respect for Pat McAfee. I think that on the platform and the high platform that he's on now, you gotta stir the pot a little bit. You know what I mean? You just have to. No, I don't have the locker room concerns anymore. I think that given what Ballard has done, the aggression that he's shown in free agency, I don't think that the locker room concerns are there like they were during this recent season because this is a team that probably should have finished 10-7, and they didn't. Kenny Moore, DeForest Buckner, they both spoke out and said, hey, there's some issues going on here. I think that let's just say that they're on the right track. to getting that culture back. I just think that it's going to be all about Anthony Richardson not tapping out of games, focusing more, showing out that he can be the guy, all sorts of things like that. So we're going to go ahead because we still have a couple questions here. So the first one is, out of the last two, would you pass up Tyler Warren for any reason? I think I remember Noah actually put this in a short, which got a lot of views because it's so controversial. But Noah, I'm going to let you start this one off. What are your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, so I did a bold prediction on this, which isn't necessarily what we think is going to come true, but something that could happen. And that was that Tyler Warren would be available at 14, and the Colts wouldn't take him. And that was obviously before all this movement that happened in free agency, where they had all these other needs throughout the roster, and they've kind of done their best to shore up and patch up some of these holes, except for tight ends. So I think that makes that prediction a little less likely to come true. I think if Tyler Warren were to fall to 14, I think the Colts would be pretty happy selecting him. I know they wanted to make that investment in a guy like Brock Bowers last year to get another weapon for the offense. I think especially that tight end position in Shane Steichen's offense is something that they've been wanting to address, but haven't that hasn't fallen into their lap in terms of free agents available or draft picks that have been available when they've been picking. So I think the Colts would be very happy to take him at 14. Me personally, I think there are other positions that I maybe would lean towards a little bit more. I think Tyler Warren obviously is going to be a big impact at a huge hole on your team. But yeah, I think like I mentioned that last question, a guy like Jahad Campbell, I think could be a little move the needle a little bit for you, a little bit more in the first season. I think it's very rare that you see a rookie tight end come in and change a whole offense the way that Brock Bowers did this past season. So I don't think if you're taking Tyler Warren at 14, you're expecting that kind of production and that kind of extreme turnaround. I don't think in what's a do or die year for Anthony Richardson, Tyler Warren would change things enough to make him the guy. I think you're going to find out whether Anthony Richardson's the guy, whether or not you have Tyler Warren or some other later round tight end. I think they've pigeonholed themselves in a position where they have to take a tight end at some point in this draft. But I think they would be just as well served to do it in rounds 2 or 3, 4 as they would in round 1.
Yeah, and look, Tyler Warren, if Richardson goes out there and throws it over his head, doesn't matter if you have Tyler Warren, not going to catch it. Richardson, Jones, whoever, they're going to need to get the man the freaking football. And Richardson has, some of the things that he missed, some of the throws he missed in 2024, they were disgusting. So he's going to need to shore that up. I think that if you're sitting there at 14, let's say Tyler Warren's sitting there, and I think Stats Matt actually nailed it. Warren is a luxury pick. If certain people fall, you might have to pass, but if they don't, you take Warren. Yeah, if you're at 14 and you've got the best player available and Tyler Warren's sitting there, you take him. I personally think they need a defensive edge. I think that, Kwity Paye, Leatu Latu, those are great. But after that, it's Samson Ebukam, who you can't exactly trust 100%. He's coming off of a bad Achilles injury. And then you're talking about Tyquan Lewis, who is literally the definition of a rotational third down pass rusher. He's part of that NASCAR package, if you will. So I also think if if you have enough of a love for a linebacker, maybe you take that as well, a guy who can do both. We'll have to see. But before we even get to anything else, we have one more question to get to that's actually designated. But since we're on the topic, Chet Men, who joined late, thank you so much, Chet. Better question is, if Warren and Campbell are both there at 14, who do you think they pick? I think they would go with Jahad Campbell.
I think it would be the opposite. I think I'd be the other way, where I'd prefer Jahad Campbell, but I think they would take Tyler Warren. Okay. It just seems like they've been trying so hard to address that at tight end. It just makes so much sense for that to fall there. I think if Brock Bowers had fallen there to their Colts pick last season, they would have selected him there. And I think it'll be the same situation here, where they're hoping Warren falls so he can be their choice number 1. But if Warren's gone, yeah, I think Campbell would be a guy they'd be happy with as well.
Very fair, very fair. Well, you know what? This last question is just perfect for the last one. And yet again, it's something that we've talked about ad nauseum. We're not going to stop talking about it until we're blue in the face, the same color as the Colts freaking jerseys. And that is, do you think Anthony Richardson can take a leap forward? What a difficult question to answer. I I personally think he can. Um, I think that, yes, he's only played 15 games. Yes, he doesn't have a lot of experience. Yes, he's only played 2 seasons. Ladies and gentlemen, he went from like 59.5% completion percentage to 47. All right. Tapped out of a game. Before the benching, he looked awful. There were certain games where he was 30%, 33%, 3 interceptions to 1 touchdown. I mean, he had, I think, 12 interceptions to 8 touchdown passes. Then he had 9 fumbles. This is a guy that didn't just regress. He was one of the most, I think, maybe even the most inaccurate passer in the NFL when you put a minimum of pass attempts down. I think that the odds show that he can't. Okay. But the work he's putting in, the talent level that he can hit, the people that are around him, guys like Jim Bob Cooter, guys like Cam Turner, by the way, who helped mold Kyler Murray and Cam Newton. Okay. Shane Steichen, the wide receivers they have, the tight end that they're probably going to get, the offensive line, Jonathan freaking Taylor. This is a team that Richardson should succeed with. They are giving Richardson every single reason to succeed. And now you're bringing in competition to say, look, you've got all these weapons, and now there's this dude who wants to start again behind you. Go make it happen. The pressure's on. And look, if Richardson can overcome that pressure, that's the biggest one. I think that you're going to get yourself an absolute animal because, look, if he hits his stride, he's terrifying. He's a terrifying football player to game plan for. What are your thoughts? I think he can, but the question is, will he? I personally think he will. I really do. I think a leap forward is just hitting like 56, 57% of your passes or better.
Yeah, I think, this question's definitely a hard one to quantify
It's
and
hard.
to try to answer.
Really hard.
Can he? Yeah, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a player in the league that you would say that nope, they can't make a leap forward. I just kind of use this because I think this is going to be the conversation forever. Is we can just kind of compare him to Daniel Jones because that's the two that the Colts can choose from. I think just based on age and what you've seen from them in the past and the amount of experience that they've had, I think Daniel Jones is a little less likely than Anthony Richardson to take that massive leap forward in terms of production. But still, I think both are pretty unlikely. You'd like to see it. I think you hit the nail on the head there when you're like, this is a team that the Colts or that Anthony Richardson should succeed with in terms of his supporting cast. This offense was catered around him. It was built around him. Shane Steichen, and just in terms of people that they've acquired and plays that they've called, the way the playbook is built has all been catered to him. I think Daniel Jones could be a guy who could come in and run some of that effectively, but that can't be an excuse for Anthony Richardson. It's built for him. He should, if anyone's going to succeed in this offense, it should be Anthony Richardson. So, it's up in the air. It's 50-50 whether or not he's going to actually do it or not. And I think that most of that falls on him mentally.
Yeah, and here's the thing, to put a cap on this question here, the entire trajectory of where this team is going to go, it lies on him doing exactly that. It lies on him taking a leap forward because, like Noah said, everything has been tailored to him. They brought in Shane Steichen and tied Richardson to his hip. Steichen is the guy, kind of like I'm sure Anarumo was with these free agents. Steichen was the guy that was like, I need Richardson. He was allowed to pick his quarterback. Okay, so that's number one. Guys like Alec Pierce, okay, guys like Josh Downs. Richardson and him were throwing in the parking lot the minute they were drafted. Okay, like Michael Pittman is supposed to be a consistent safety blanket for a guy like Richardson. They wanted all of this for him to blossom, and so far he's just like sucked himself in. And so the big hope is 3 things. Accuracy gets better. You can't win in the NFL under 50%. You can't win in the NFL most of the time under 60. Okay, let alone under 50. Number 2 is he's got to stop turning the ball over so much. All right, these passes where there's a guy 5 yards in front of him and he tries to kill a fly with a bazooka. Dude, you can't do that anymore. And most importantly of all is the guy has to understand what it means to be an NFL quarterback. I don't care how tired you are. You can't tap out. You can't get benched. When Shane Steichen said we have Joe Flacco in because he gives us the best chance to win, everyone called BS. It was because Richardson wasn't ready. They felt like he was really struggling. I think Ballard said he almost looked like he was drowning out there. you can't look like that. You can't look like you're drowning as a professional quarterback. So I think that those things are going to be absolutely crucial, and you're hoping that he takes the next step
Yeah.
forward. But were you going to say something?
Yeah, and you didn't even hit on the thing that Chris Ballard mentioned was he was most concerned about was his health there. I think
Oh,
if everything that you mentioned there was like that 50-50, is he going to play well or not? And then on top of that, I think you have to add the 50-50 of is he going to be healthy or not? So you combine those, you're already working from a 25% chance that he's going to be the guy, which I think puts you at a huge disadvantage.
yeah, and you know what? At the end of the day, it's all about Anthony Richardson. But we'll go ahead and just briefly skim over the latest news and rumors. And so what that is the top 30 visits. So the Colts have had B.J. Mays, defensive back out of Texas A&M, still putting a priority on defensive back. You've had Alfred Collins, defensive tackle out of Texas. Bryce Cable-Dew, offensive line from Kansas. But the one that probably sticks out the most is Quinn Ewers from Texas, which, by the way, the Colts had a formal talk with at the combine. This one's interesting because Quinn Ewers has been thrown under the bus a little bit because he had kind of a rough 2024. There's a lot of people that think he's being undervalued. What are your thoughts on these visits or on these top 30 visits? I think that defensive back, defensive tackle, offensive line are all huge, but I mean, even though they got Daniel Jones, they're still talking to guys like Quinn Ewers. That is pretty interesting, and that is noteworthy.
Yeah, I think that one's noteworthy. I don't think necessarily because of the player. I think it's hard to really keep track of what's going on where, because I think with these top 30 visits, just as much as they are about getting more information on the player, it's also about finding out who you can cross off your board and not. So we don't know at the end of these top 30 visits, at least, I mean, there was some preliminary interest of them being on the board, but I mean, after the top 30 visit, he could be off completely, or he could be somebody that they like. And I think that's the case with pretty much every name that you're going to see thrown out there. There's definitely some guys that come in for these top 30s that would come draft time or come a month from now. I think the draft is exactly a month away now at this point. I think those top 30 visits, some of those names are just going to be crossed off the board entirely based off of what they learned. So I think sometimes you're looking at these as positions and people that you think they've got an eye on, or like around that range of people they're looking for in that position. I think that makes it clear that they're looking for some guys at that range at quarterback, maybe like fifth, sixth, seventh round guys that they can add to the roster. I think my bold prediction of them adding a day two quarterback, that was pre Daniel Jones signing, I don't think that's happening anymore at this point. But it's interesting to still see them being interested in some names there in the later rounds.
Yeah, and hey, at the end of the day, you can't take the quarterback lightly right now. I mean, even though you brought in Daniel Jones, you're not even sure about Anthony Richardson. I mean, hell, you're not even sure about Daniel Jones. Anybody that says they are, they're lying to themselves because the guy might not even play that better with a good team or good talent around him. So we'll have to see. But guys, we're over an hour. That is our show. Thank you so much for joining in. We had so many questions, and then we did have 3 super chats. Paul Wilson laid down 2, and then Truett laid down 1 at the beginning of the episode. So thank you so much. Don't forget to like the Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook. Follow Indianapolis Colts on SI. And then, of course, on X, we are at Colts_on_SI. Subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle on YouTube and click that bell to turn on notifications. You don't want to miss any time that me and Noah, myself individually, whatever, have to go live with breaking news, because we might need to do that at some point. You want to be tuned in. If you want to listen to the Horseshoe Huddle podcast, of course, subscribe to us on Apple, on Google Play, on Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. We will be there. But until then, guys, please enjoy your week, because I'm actually going to be at Notre Dame's Pro Day on Thursday. So what we're going to do, dare I say it, you guys aren't going to be happy about this, but me and Noah are going to take a break on Thursday. So we're going to take the day off. Everyone enjoy your week. We will be back here after the weekend on Monday to continue giving you Colts coverage, and that'll also allow potentially some things to happen. So until then, enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy your Thursday. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll be seeing you next week. First thing on Monday, okay? See ya.